What's up, everybody? HMV. I want to say a big thanks to HMV for having me on this cool thing that you guys are doing. It's not only keeping vinyl alive, but keeping it very, very cool and happening and relevant and all those kind of things. I'm really a big fan of vinyl, and I just love peeking into people's vinyl collections. So I'm very honored that you asked to look into mine. So I'm gonna go through a bunch of stuff and hope you dig it. I'm not going to go through some of the obvious things that you might find in there. I wanted to kind of spice it up a little bit and put some stuff that you might not expect. But let's get started. We all know this one, right? Robin Trower Live. Such a killer album. And I discovered this in my very early teens. And I was a big fan of this and Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush and Uli Roth from the Scorpions. I was really into that type of guitar playing back then, and well, this got me into some trouble in a little bit of hot water with the guitar community out there because apparently people have found out that I'm not the biggest Hendrix fan in the world, although all my idols are huge fans of Hendrix. I'm a complete respecter of Hendrix. I totally respect his great achievements and his influence and accomplishments, but you have to understand, before I ever even heard the name of Jimi Hendrix, I was already a big fan of Robin Trower and those other guys I listed before. And those guys were just really taking what Hendrix did, I guess, and just took it to astronomical levels of coolness. And so I was used to that. It must have been like about at least a year or two after being into these guys till somebody said, you know, if you like these guys, you should check out Hendrix, because he's the guy that your favorite guys are modeling themselves after, so you should at least check Hendrix out. So I'm like, wow, that's really cool. He's the originator of all this stuff. So I checked it out and I'm like, it was like, you know, I could see where these guys got the influence from, but what these guys were doing would just blew my mind more. I guess a way to put that into modern context is, if you have, I was like 14 at the time, 14, 15. You have a 14, 15-year-old kid, he's got the latest iPhone, and he's doing his thing on the iPhone, and then you go up to him and say, you know what, you really should check out the iPhone 1 because that's what started the whole thing. That's kind of the analogy that I can come up with for that. I just didn't discover Hendrix at the point where my heroes did. My heroes discovered him when there was no loud and noisy guitars going on, so it really blew their minds. But all of my heroes who idolized him kind of took his music into a place that I discovered before I ever heard of Hendrix. So of course I respect Hendrix till the end of the world, but when I was 14 or 15, I just didn't want to know about it because I knew the guys like this. And this Robin Trower Live album, I definitely recommend to you. It still sounds great to get today, and I love it. You got to know this one here. This is the Blue Oyster Cult live album. This kills. If you don't buy an album from a jacket cover, you've not done what rock and rollers do. I mean, you see this in the store, you know it's going to be heavy, especially about the time that this thing came out. There was nothing like this. And look at the inside of this thing. There's no way this is not going to be rad. There's just no way. So you just pick it up and you buy it, and the thing just kicks ass. So many of their heavier songs, before they kind of became more mainstream, they were really a groundbreaking guitar band with lots of interesting riffs and different kind of lyrics that didn't really make a lot of sense but sounded cool. 7 Screaming Dizzbusters, what's that all about? But it was so incredibly cool, and it still rocks today. Of course, the Japanese version has like this kind of stuff that comes in it. You get like all the liner notes and lyrics and just stuff about Blue Oyster Cult, and all the Japanese pressings give you a little bit of extra bonus stuff in there, which I always liked. Kind of goes without saying. With records, of course, when I was a kid, it was all about records, and Ramones were my biggest thing. Ramones and Kiss, maybe, were my biggest thing that really got me into music, got me into wanting to play music, and really just got me into listening to music. And yeah, it doesn't have the guitar insanity of a Robin Trower, but it kept me into music forever. I'm still into this now. And now they have these, I guess they're reissues, and inside this thing comes with a book and 3 CDs. But like, what's cool about this is there's a vinyl record in here, and it's remastered, and it just sounds killer. It sounds exactly like the way you remembered it when you first put that record on, when you got it in real time. And eventually I'm going to get all of their reissues. I only have 2 of them now, but this is a great one. What a classic cover this is. All right, if you're into the Ramones, you've got to love the Runaways as well. And when I was a kid, again, all this stuff is like the records I'm talking about, it's from kid time stuff. That stuff is really what's at your core, no matter where you've gone in music afterwards. And vinyl kind of even makes you feel that way. Even when you're listening to new current vinyl, it kind of gives you that feeling that you had when you were a kid, because you're sitting down in front of the stereo, you're listening to a record, you're looking at the album, you're looking at the liner notes, you've got headphones on maybe, and you're concentrating on the music. And for a lot of us, we didn't really do that for many years, but it's cool that so many people are doing it now. Anyway, this record, the Runaways were one of my all-time favorite bands as a kid. They looked like every girl in my school, except they dressed sexier and they played rocking guitars. Isn't that just amazing? Can you imagine a 14, 15-year-old kid and the girl sitting next to you in class looks like this, but doesn't play like this or doesn't dress like this? And like, what a cover this thing is. What a cover this thing is. Unbelievable. So, and a little side story to this one. Jackie Fox came to Japan. This must have been about like 2008 or something like that, quite a while ago. She came to Japan and she was at a party of a mutual friend. And my friend called me up and said, "Hey, you want to meet Jackie Fox? I know you're a Runaways fan." So of course, once a fanboy, always a fanboy. I went to this party and I brought my record, had her sign it, and I was just like, wow, this is the ultimate thing. Jackie Fox is signing my record. Cool. And then the party ended, and I said, "Oh, well, where are you going after this?" She says, "Well, I'm going back to the hotel." I said, "Well, can I take you back to the hotel? I'm taking a cab, and my place is near yours." And she's like, "Sure." So, okay, I'm in the same cab with Jackie Fox of the Runaways, and my 13-year-old self is just beyond belief. I'm in Japan sharing a cab with Jackie Fox of the Runaways. Of course, it was several decades too late to really make use of any of that, but still, it was great, and this record rocks so hard. I think my favorite music, before I discovered Japanese music, I discovered Japanese music in around the 1990s, and once I discovered that, that's all I wound up listening to. But before that, I loved the 50s music and the 70s music. Didn't care for much in the 60s or the 80s, but the 50s and 70s, it just was everything. And I still love that stuff a lot. So I have tons of doo-wop records. I had to, it was hard for me to choose one to show you guys. And I chose this because a lot of you might know it. I have a lot of real obscure ones, but Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, it was such an influential unit back in the 50s, and even after they stopped making music. That's where Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 got a lot of their influence from, and Ronnie Spector was a huge fan of his, and he was just very, very influential. Frankie Lyman here. Unbelievable, charismatic singer. To get that kind of joy out of singing, you hear the joy of singing come from this guy. And the arrangements, the doo-wop arrangements on this record and their other stuff is just so nicely worked out, and just great songwriting, song crafting, fun songs, great sax solos. It's just great stuff. And so I collect these as kind of a maniac, but I love this one a lot. And in that same kind of era, you really cannot go wrong with West Side Story. I think if I was pressed to have to answer what's probably the most amazing piece of music that's ever been written, it would have to be this. I just really don't know how to explain to you just how cool I think the music of this is. Every second of it is so well thought out and well constructed, and just it's legendary and will never get old. It always has musical things to it that are always relevant. And I think one of the keys to that is it's very, very dissonant. You know, happy music sounds happy, and you can really get the decade, you can get a timeline from really happy music. But with dissonant music kind of always sounds dissonant. And even in the happy points of this, it's dissonant. You have to listen to it again. Listen to it with rock ears. And believe me, you're going to love this record. This is the original soundtrack recording. There are other recordings of this that are very nice. But this is the original one that people bought when it came out. And I think it came out like in the early 60s, like 61 or 62. I could be wrong. Some of you might know, maybe not know, maybe you do know. I'm an absolute maniac Elvis Presley collector. I have been collecting his records since I was about 6. It's just the one hobby that I have. I really don't do anything other than music. And the hobby is I collect Elvis records, vinyl that is. So I probably have over 1,000 different Elvis vinyls from all around the world, everywhere from Argentina to Zanzibar. They all have different records, and I just love collecting the vinyls of Elvis. This one is from Chile, and the reason I chose this, obviously because it's one of the super, super rare records, but the song listings, unlike any of the other official Elvis releases, original releases, they're all rock songs. They're all up-tempo songs. If you look at the first 2 Elvis records, you know, the one with the iconic cover that the Clash copied so nicely, I might add, and the second Elvis record after that, they have the rockers on it, but they also have like country songs and ballads and kind of really slow songs to it. For some reason, I guess the people in Chile really wanted to rock. All of these songs are really up-tempo songs, which back in the mid-late 50s was quite scandalous. It was quite new. I mean, before Elvis, rock was not in the mainstream at all. It was in like the world of rhythm and blues, and they called it race music back then. And they had music that was really rockin', but it was in the underground, kind of like heavy music is now. But Elvis was the first guy to make really, really exciting music come out to the mainstream. And this is one of my favorite records of his because it's all rock stuff. So I can't waste this opportunity to show you a couple more of my favorite rare Elvis stuff before I go. These are my favorite things, the singles from South America. I love the ones from Japan, but there's only so many hours in a day. Just love this stuff. If you start collecting it, you can like become a maniac. Only collectors will be caring about this. So it's really just kind of a flex for the collectors out there. It's a pretty decent collection. There are some world-class collectors out there that I can't touch, but it's pretty good. And I just love Elvis stuff. I love vinyl, and thank you so much for having me, HMV. I hope to see you in the UK and everywhere that HMV covers. I know it's got a big presence here in Japan. Thanks for keeping vinyl alive. Marty Friedman, out.